This episode is brought to you by MEXC Crypto Trading Platform. With the wild swings we're experiencing in these crypto markets, why not take advantage of the wide range of cryptos to actually trade on MEXC? Find your next moonshot and never miss another crypto gem again. And use the link below and I'll airdrop you $25 worth of Bitcoin. Visit MEXC.com for more information. Link in the description below.
This my two Satoshis, who need 2 cents when they can get double from stacking Toshis, yeah.
Hola, buenos dias, GNGs. I am Trekkers UKs, and this is my two Satoshis, brought to you here on CBTV. If you don't know, that is Crypto Blood TV. And so if you are new to, the My Two Satoshis series, basic idea is I cover some crypto-related stories and some non-crypto-related stories, and I give my two Satoshis on how I interpret these things. Some things could relate to what's going on in your life. Some things might not directly or even relate to what's going on in your life, but nonetheless, I throw these things out because this way you at least, if you're paying attention to enough of the episodes, hopefully the information I provide on here works to help y'all better your position in whatever it is you're doing. Understand this isn't to be taken as financial advice, but at least get you to start asking questions about what's going on in your life and these other things that have indirect or direct influences. Case in point, geopolitics. Case in point, things going on with the crypto regulations. So let's jump into these stories. First story, this is an old one. Some of these stories I do pick, I will let y'all know, are not necessarily the new news thing. They might be a couple of days, a couple of weeks, even a couple of months old. They might not even be an actual top headline story. And that's the thing that gets it is catching those things that kind of fall in that, in my opinion, might have some relation to what's going on in your life or how you understand this space or what's going on with you. But here we go. So Nayib Bukele says 44 countries meet in El Salvador to discuss Bitcoin. This is a couple weeks old at this point, and basic idea was 32 central banks, 12 financial authorities will have met in El Salvador at this point to talk about cryptocurrencies. And when you look at the list of the countries that they're naming said, hey, we're going to send a representative. These are all arguably the countries that are considered in the second and third tier category as far as governmental structure and economic developments and things like that. It's not to say that they don't have tech. It's not to say that they don't have financial institutions. Hey, these are the central banks of these countries going to this meeting, right? Now, here's the thing though. I know some people were definitely kind of well, that's not really cool. This is against the whole Bitcoin ethos because it's the central banks that are coming from these different countries. It's not necessarily representatives of the people or companies that are local to these different countries that they're naming. I am so growing to loathe this phrase of financial inclusion. All right, my point being is that this event happened. Over the coming weeks and months, there will be information that gets reeled out in regards to what was said, what countries are trying to do certain deals with others. And as a counter of this, what also will happen is the World Economic Forum, the IMF, different countries that are in first tier incumbent statuses, like countries in Europe, such as France or England, definitely the US, they're going to start poking and tapping at these different countries to be like, hey, what did y'all talk about? What did you agree to? Because at the end of the day, what's going on here is the countries that are in the head seat of the UN or other financial or global bodies, certain participants, i.e. the US, X amount of the countries in Europe, are going to argue, hey, you can't have your own meeting. I know you're a sovereign country, but you can't have your own meeting with other sovereign countries. That's literally how this is gonna come out in the next couple of days and weeks and months, whereas you can't do blah, blah, blah. It's like what happened with what's the country? The Central African something. I can't remember the name of the country exactly, but as soon as they were yeah, so we're gonna start moving on this crypto thing, all of a sudden the IMF came in and were whoa, what are you guys doing? You're gonna mess up the economy if you mess with the crypto stuff and incorporate it into your banking. Why? Because they want to have their version of control. And if you go off and do your own thing and incorporate technology that allows you to have your own true sovereignty in how you're using money and currency and financing and capital, it doesn't work for centralization. It also doesn't work for the argument of financial inclusion. In order for you to have it be a quote equal system, you have to get everyone in on doing the same thing. And if you can't get everyone in, how inclusive is it? But anywho, jumping on to this next story. I seen this the other day and I read through it. This article is long, and I'm not going to go through the whole thing, but I do want to touch on it because it made me think of the back in the day stuff with Rockefellers and like that era of folks, where these were people who were titan of industry, right? And in this particular scenario, we're talking about Jeff Bezos. And the author of this, who is Hamilton Nalone, Nalon, I might be saying this name wrong. I know I might more than likely be saying this name wrong. But the point is, he writes this whole article out. And this is a pretty long article, so I'm not going into the whole thing. But I'm gonna make the point what he's going on about with Bezos. Basically is that, hey, this billionaire dude, let's just read this line, right? For the past few weeks, the centibillionaire Amazon founder has been firing off tweets not about his typical annoyed interest in improved penis-shaped rocket design, luxury head wax, but rather about his policy opinions. Though Bezos, or whichever PR drone draft his tweet, writes with the boldness of a man who has attended many management consulting meetings, it is easy to imagine the seething anger that must have been present in order to prompt him to produce them in the first place. On May 13th, he criticized one of Joe Biden's economic pronouncements, tweeting that raising corp taxes is fine to discuss, taming inflation is critical to discuss, mushing them together is just misdirection. The point of this author's thing is Jeff seems to be making more public statements about his position on policies as how the country is run. I'm getting close on this one for y'all. And so the idea behind him getting more public about it is, what's going on? Why are you making these public statements as opposed to just doing what you was doing in private? And I've heard some arguments about how the techno folks, the technocrat folks, the FANG folks, they are arguably the American allegory of what we talk about with Russia and like old Eastern Europe and things like that, because they have the money and the air of the people who are the regulators and quote in charge. So here you have it that Bezos starts making more public statements on what he thinks. Look at what you call it from Microsoft. This dude is a computer engineer who is making comments and decisions and looking to implement ideas and policies around public health. He's a tech dude, and this is what is going on. It was a perfect example in regards to that guy in particular that I cannot remember his name, but y'all know who I'm talking about from Microsoft. And it's just like, is Bezos moving in the same direction? In regards to this author though, why I don't go through the whole thing is because he kind of, how to say this? The article is definitely covered where he has a disdain for Bezos. And so I didn't want to go through all of that with it, but you can definitely read through this if you want to, because the link will be in the description on this and we'll further delve into it. And I'm also like wrapping it up to this to say, just look at the American political system and how things went from back in the early 1800s, what was going on in the later 1800s, and how the money bag folks were influencing and setting up certain regulatory practices, policies, and national interactions of what we did locally as well as what we did overseas. It looks like we might be having the same thing happen again. I don't know. Just my interpretation of these things, not saying that it's a black and white issue and I'm 100% right. If you know something different, hey, the comments are open and I would greatly appreciate it if you drop one in saying, hey, you're talking out your ass, Trek. It's cool. I'm a grown adult. I can take criticism, y'all. All right, jumping into this next story. All right, so this one is about the ESMA Chair. And the ESMA Chair says crypto needs urgent regulation to protect the investor. We're gonna go through some of these highlights. Verona Rose, the chair of the European Securities and Market Authority, has called for the regulation of the crypto space. And basically she did an interview in this month of May. Rose said she is eagerly waiting for lawmakers to pass the blueprint for crypto regulation into law. According to her, the rising inflation will force retail investors to inject funds into risky crypto while trying to find investments to compensate for inflation and bring greater returns. This might lead to greater risk taking. What she's really saying in this is when the market starts crashing in every sector, people are going to try to find any other thing that they can stake their capital in, that they can park their value in and hopefully get a return, or at least weather out the craziness going, whatever market sector you're talking about, whether we're talking about commodities, whether we're talking about bonds, whether we're talking about the crypto itself, whether we're talking about traditional stocks, whether we're talking about real estate. That's what she's talking about. Now, granted, this is a European thing, but don't think the American folks and the Canadian folks and the Latin American folks aren't having these same type of conversations at their regulatory financial institution level. Other thing to note, this position she's in, this isn't you get to elect her. There's a whole different process. This isn't the public elected this lady to this position for the organization that she sits in. Other thing I want to do real quick, this is actually her right here. Going through, just because I was curious, like, all right, who is this lady? What does she look like? Like, where does she come from and stuff? And I just wanted to show y'all, this is actually who she is right now. And she is the chair. And then there's this other lady. This lady is the director of something. So she's just like, you got the chairperson and then like the director of operations. So she's the new person who also got hired. And they're both pretty much working in tandem to be like, hey, we need to really start pushing this public narrative of crypto needs regulation, but we're going to say from the standpoint of if we don't regulate the people from themselves, they will cause bigger risks to the economic system because they will be in a space that we cannot, through technical abilities, right, meaning the softwares, the companies that actually have the platforms that the people are on, as well as through regulation, control how the market moves. That's what she's talking about. That's what she wants to get put in place. Now, I'm gonna jump into this other part here. There's another organization called MiCA. So the EU is pinning its hopes on standardizing crypto regulations on the market in crypto assets regulation, which is the MiCA thing. A draft framework proposed in September 2020, and that's what she's talking about as far as this particular draft that she's hoping gets put in soon. MiCA's road to implementation has been long. The draft is currently under examination by the European Parliament and Council. Despite this progress, Ross says she hopes the European Parliament and Council finalize their review process in the next few months and pass the MiCA into law either in 2023 or 2024. Again, I'm looking at this and reading it as they're putting in these control points so that people just don't exit out of the local economy in regards to their ability to move their capital, move it into a currency that governing organizations like this cannot control and influence. So that's the whole thing behind we need this regulation. They're preparing, in my little humble opinion, I'm just some guy on the internet, this is not financial advice, they're preparing for when the economy really starts in your face screwing up. And they're gonna tell you it's about protecting. Okay, if you believe it, I'm not telling you wrong. I'm just telling you what my interpretation is of how I see these things moving about. And again, comments is always open. You can always give me a little back and forth with this. I appreciate it. ECB added that the crypto market is gravitating to a point where unbacked crypto assets will risk financial stability. Here's the funny part about that. They're talking about there's nothing back in the crypto thing. This is when you get that distinction of what is the consensus mechanism behind the protocol for it? Is it a proof of work? Is it a proof of stake? If you pay attention to how these particular arguments are framed, it's that there's nothing backing it that you can say, oh, it's either pegged to a real world physical asset or it's pegged to something where you can quantify what this thing in real world is. Proof of stake, arguably, and I'm bringing this in regards to how money works, it's on the same footing as far as currency, like national currency, where what backs that? It's the government telling you to believe in it, and they also use military force and political jerry-rigging to enforce the belief of the market. Like, yes, this thing is stable. Yes, this thing works, but there's no physical asset behind it. No currency right now on the national level, as far as traditional money and things along that line, has a physical thing backing it right now. It's who got the bigger military, who has the bigger political clout. No one's using gold and silver on this stuff anymore. There might be some change in the wind down the road, especially with this Russia situation. The point being is making that statement is asinine because what's backing currency? Anywho, I'm gonna just leave it there. Link for this will be in the description, so you can definitely dig down on this if you want to. And I'm gonna close it out with, we're doing these live stream giveaways where you can get either a Oculus hard wallet, that's for the paid members in regards to the CBTV membership. And then we're also giving away a ticket for the Blockchain Futurist Conference, which will take place in August, and that will be in Toronto. So shout outs to all of my connects to the north. I can't wait to get up there and see y'all. And if you don't get the free ticket, I also got the 50% off. You use the referral code TREKK50, which is Trek50. That will get you 50% off of the ticket for the Blockchain Futures Conference. This is not down here in the States. This is going to be further up north across the border. Hey, I hope you come up. I hope we can, chop it up and make some more connections, right? It's all about community, as we say. Anywho, last thing is, I'm Trek with 2Ks. This is my two Satoshis, and this is brought to you here on CBTV. And until the next one, G&G, one.